Dilapidated estates selling for pocket change usually hide dark secrets. Young newlyweds bought this exact nightmare, seeking only cheap shelter. Instead, they uncovered terrifying truths buried behind plaster walls. Greed, corruption, and deadly traps waited inside. Their lives shattered instantly when they cracked open history's deadliest hidden vault. Liam and Chloe Dawson were drowning, not in the literal sense, but in the suffocating, slow-motion way that modern debt pulls you under. Liam, a high school history teacher, and Chloe, a freelance graphic designer, were barely scraping by in their cramped Seattle apartment. Every month was a delicate juggling act of student loans, exorbitant rent, and rising grocery bills. They needed an out. They needed a miracle. That miracle seemingly appeared on a dreary Tuesday evening while Chloe was mindlessly scrolling through a distressed real estate website. Nestled deep in the listing pages, buried under foreclosures and empty lots, was a property that made her stop and wipe her glasses. 88 Hollow Creek Road. $14,500. It wasn't an empty lot. The photograph showed a massive, looming 1,910 craftsman-style home, surrounded by overgrown weeping willows. It boasted 4 bedrooms, a wraparound porch, and 3 acres of land in a forgotten pocket of rural Pennsylvania. The price was so absurdly low that Chloe assumed it was missing a zero. "Liam," she called out, her voice trembling slightly. "Look at this." Liam leaned over her shoulder, his brow furrowing as he read the description. "Property sold strictly as is, cash buyers only. No inspections permitted prior to closing." "It's a tear-down," Liam concluded, though his eyes lingered on the intricate stonework of the chimney visible in the grainy photo. "It has to be structurally compromised, or it's sitting on a toxic dump." But desperation breeds irrational hope. The next morning, Liam called the listing agent, a woman named Brianna Calloway. Her voice over the phone was brisk, clipped, and tinged with something that sounded suspiciously like surprise. "You want to see the Hollow Creek place?" Brianna asked, pausing for a long moment. "Are you folks from around here?" "No, we're currently out of state," Liam replied. "But we're very interested. Why is the price so low? Is there a lien on the property?" "No liens," Brianna said quickly. "A little too quickly. It's just an estate sale. The heirs want it off their hands. It's been sitting empty for over 40 years. It needs a lot of work. If you're serious, you can drive out. But I'm telling you right now, I don't go inside." That singular sentence should have been the first glaring red flag. But a 3,000 square foot house for 14 grand was a siren song they couldn't ignore. 3 days later, they cashed out the absolute last of their meager savings, packed their Honda Civic, and drove across the country to Pennsylvania. The town of Oakhaven was a fading coal town where the main street consisted of a diner, a hardware store, and a rusted gas station. Hollow Creek Road was 3 miles outside of town, winding through dense, shadowy woods that seemed to swallow the sunlight. When they finally pulled into the gravel driveway of number 88, the house loomed before them like a sleeping beast. It was breathtakingly decaying. The paint was peeling in long gray strips, and the porch sagged heavily on the left side. Yet, the foundation looked solid, thick, hand-cut stone that had weathered a century of storms. Brianna Calloway was waiting by her idling sedan. She didn't turn off her engine. She handed Liam a heavy brass key attached to a rusted ring. "I unlocked the deadbolt," she said, her eyes darting nervously toward the dark, dust-caked windows of the second floor. "Take your time. Call me if you want to make an offer. I'll be in my office." Before Liam could even say thank you, she threw the car into drive and sped down the dirt road, leaving a cloud of dust in her wake. Chloe shivered, wrapping her cardigan tighter around her shoulders. "Friendly." Liam took her hand, squeezing it reassuringly. "Let's just look. If the roof is caved in, we turn around and go home." They unlocked the heavy oak front door and pushed it open. The hinges screamed in protest. Inside, the air was thick, smelling of damp wood, old paper, and a heavy, metallic staleness. But as they walked from room to room, their apprehension slowly morphed into stunned disbelief. The roof hadn't caved in. There was no severe water damage. The hardwood floors were covered in a thick layer of grime, but beneath it, the wood was intact. It was like a time capsule. Old sheet-covered furniture sat like ghosts in the parlor. "Liam," Chloe whispered, tracing the ornate woodwork of the main staircase. This house it's a masterpiece. It just needs love and a lot of bleach. They spent 2 hours exploring. Everything was strangely preserved, yet there was an undeniable heaviness to the house. It was too quiet. And strangely, despite the massive exterior of the house, the inside felt claustrophobic. The hallways seemed a bit too narrow, the walls unusually thick, but to a couple desperate for a home, these were architectural quirks, not warnings. They drove into town to sign the paperwork that very afternoon. Handing over the cashier's check for $14,500 felt like jumping out of an airplane without checking the parachute. They were officially homeowners. To celebrate, they stopped at the local diner. The bell above the door jingled, and conversations abruptly ceased. The locals, mostly older men nursing black coffee, stared at them with unabashed curiosity. The waitress, a woman with a name tag that read Doris, poured them coffee and smiled cautiously. "You folks passing through?" "Actually, we just bought a house here," Liam beamed, unable to hide his excitement. "Out on Hollow Creek Road. Number 88. The diner went dead silent. The clinking of forks against plates stopped. Doris's coffee pot hovered in midair. She stared at them, her face draining of color. "The Althouse place?" An old man in a flannel shirt muttered from the corner booth. He looked at them as if they were already dead. "You bought the Althouse place?" I guess that was the previous owner's name," Chloe stammered, the heavy silence of the diner suddenly making her skin prickle. Doris slowly set the coffee pot down. "Honey," she leaned in close, her voice dropping to a harsh whisper. "No one has lived in that house since 1934, and there's a damn good reason for it. You shouldn't have bought it. You need to leave it be." Before they could ask what she meant, Doris turned and hurried into the kitchen. The old men in the diner silently turned their attention back to their cold food. The message was clear. They were not welcome to ask questions. Despite the ominous warning at the diner, Liam and Chloe refused to let small-town superstition ruin their triumph. They had a house. They had a roof over their heads. They bought air mattresses, buckets of cleaning supplies, and set up camp in the massive downstairs parlor. The first 2 weeks were grueling. They worked from sunrise to midnight, tearing up rotted carpets, scrubbing decades of nicotine and soot off the walls, and pulling down layers of hideous, peeling floral wallpaper. The physical labor was exhausting, but the house slowly began to breathe again under their care. Yet, the deeper they dug into the renovation, the more the house's bizarre anomalies became impossible to ignore. It started with the master bedroom on the second floor. Chloe was trying to sketch out a floor plan to figure out where to place their furniture. She measured the interior walls of the bedroom, then went out into the hallway to measure the overall length of the second floor. She did the math 3 times. "Liam," she called out. Liam walked up the stairs, wiping drywall dust from his forehead. "What's up? Found a ghost?" he joked, though his smile was strained. The isolation of the house was beginning to wear on them both. "Look at this." Chloe handed him her sketchbook. "The exterior wall of the house on this side is 45 feet long. I measured it outside yesterday, but the interior hallway, plus the master bedroom and the guest bathroom, only adds up to 36 feet. Liam frowned, doing the mental math. Maybe the exterior walls are just incredibly thick? Old insulation techniques? 9 feet of insulation? Chloe countered, tapping her pencil against the paper. "Liam, there is a 9 by 12-foot space missing from the second floor. It's completely unaccounted for. It's like a dead zone." Liam took the tape measure and retraced her steps. She was right. There was a massive discrepancy. He walked to the end of the upstairs hallway. It terminated in a flat, heavily plastered wall adorned with a cheap, fading sconce. If Chloe's measurements were correct, there was an entire room sitting directly behind this drywall, completely sealed off from the rest of the house. "Grab the sledgehammer," Liam said, his voice dropping an octave. Chloe hesitated. "Liam, what if it's structural? What if it's sealed for a reason? Remember what that waitress said? I don't care about local ghost stories, Chloe. If there's rotten framing or a pest infestation behind this wall, we need to know before we sink any more money into this place." He retrieved the heavy sledgehammer from their toolkit downstairs. Standing before the dead-end wall, he took a deep breath, swung the hammer back, and drove it hard into the plaster. Crack. The plaster didn't just break, it shattered, sending a cloud of white, chalky dust billowing into the hallway. Liam coughed, waving his hand to clear the air. He peered into the jagged hole he had created. "It's hollow," he muttered. He swung again and again, tearing away large chunks of drywall and wooden lath. As the hole widened, a cold, stale draft rushed out from the darkness inside, carrying with it a smell so distinct and overwhelming it made Chloe gag. It smelled of old copper, dry rot, and a sharp, chemical scent, like aged ink. Liam grabbed his heavy-duty flashlight and shined the beam through the opening. The light cut through the floating dust motes, illuminating something that made his blood run cold. Behind the plaster and wood framing was a solid, riveted steel door. It looked like the door to a bank vault, complete with a heavy rotary combination dial and a thick metal handle. It had been intentionally walled over and hidden from the world. "What in the hell?" Liam whispered, reaching his hand through the jagged drywall to touch the cold steel. They spent the next 3 hours frantically tearing down the rest of the false wall, their hands blistered and bleeding. When the steel door was completely exposed, it stood ominous and imposing. The dial was locked tight. "We need a locksmith," Chloe said, staring at the door with a mixture of terror and overwhelming curiosity. "No, we need the police. Why would someone seal a vault inside a residential hallway?" "Wait," Liam said, his flashlight beam catching something on the floor near the base of the vault door. He knelt down. Shoved beneath the heavy bottom hinge was a small, rusted tin box. He pulled it out. The latch was broken. Inside the tin were 3 things: a heavy, tarnished brass key, a folded piece of heavily yellowed parchment, and a single, unspent, .45 caliber bullet. Liam unfolded the parchment carefully. The handwriting was elegant, spidery, and written in faded black ink. "To whoever breaks the seal, the combination is 42187. Use the key to disarm the tumbler lock first. Do not turn the handle without turning the key, or the phosphorus trigger will ignite the contents. I have taken what I am owed. Let the town of Oakhaven burn for their sins. Richard Althouse, the 14th of October, 1934. Chloe felt the blood drain from her face. "Phosphorus trigger?" "Liam, this is a booby trap. We need to leave. Right now." But the pull of the mystery, the sheer, intoxicating gravity of the unknown was too strong. Liam looked from the note to the heavy brass key. Richard Althouse. The name the old man in the diner had muttered with such venom. "He said he took what he was owed," Liam murmured, sliding the brass key into a hidden keyhole beneath the main dial. It clicked into place perfectly. He turned it. A heavy, mechanical clack echoed from deep within the steel door. "Liam, stop!" Chloe shouted, grabbing his arm. "We own this house, Chloe," Liam said, his eyes burning with a feverish intensity she had never seen before. "Whatever is in here, it belongs to us now." With trembling hands, Liam gripped the cold metal dial. 4, 2, he spun it left. 18, he spun it right. 7. He gripped the heavy steel handle and pulled down. With a groaning screech of metal that hadn't moved in 90 years, the vault door swung open. They stood in the threshold, shining the flashlight into the hidden room. It was not a small safe. It was an entire office, perfectly preserved in the darkness. An oak desk sat in the center, covered in meticulous stacks of leather-bound ledgers. Along the back wall were wooden crates, neatly stacked to the ceiling. Liam stepped inside, his boots leaving tracks in the thick dust on the floor. He walked to the nearest crate. He used the claw of his hammer to pry up the brittle wooden lid. Chloe gasped, bringing her hands to her mouth. The crate was packed to the brim with neatly banded stacks of currency. But it wasn't modern money. They were large-sized bills, vibrant and distinctly golden. "Gold certificates," Liam breathed, pulling out a stack. "These are 1,928 series $1,000 bills. Chloe, there are millions of dollars in here." They had found a fortune, the answer to every prayer, the solution to every debt. They had bought the cheapest house in the state and stumbled into a literal treasure trove. But as Liam turned to the oak desk, his flashlight swept across the open ledgers. He leaned down to read the incredibly neat handwriting. The entries weren't just financial figures. They were names. Hundreds of them. Calloway, Hastings, Sullivan, the founding families of Oakhaven. Next to each name were detailed records of blackmail, extortion, and stolen land deeds. Liam's stomach plummeted. "Chloe," he said softly, realizing the terrifying truth. The town didn't avoid this house because it was haunted. They avoided it because they knew this room was here, and they thought it was rigged to explode. Suddenly, the heavy silence of the house was broken. From downstairs, echoing through the empty parlor, came the distinct sound of the front door creaking open. Heavy, deliberate footsteps began to walk across their living room floor, and they were heading toward the stairs. The heavy, deliberate footsteps on the main staircase echoed through the suffocating silence of the house. Liam instinctively clicked off the heavy-duty flashlight, plunging the hidden vault and the second-floor hallway into absolute darkness. He reached out, his hand finding Chloe's trembling shoulder. He pulled her back into the shadows of the steel doorway. "Who's there?" Liam called out, trying to keep his voice steady. He gripped the wooden handle of his sledgehammer with white-knuckled intensity. The footsteps stopped at the top of the landing. A beam of harsh yellow light cut through the drywall dust, still lingering in the air. "Well, I'll be damned," a familiar, clipped voice rang out. "You actually got it open." Stepping into the beam of light was Brianna Calloway, the real estate agent. But the brisk, professional demeanor she had worn 3 weeks ago was entirely gone. In her right hand, she held a high-powered lantern. Behind her stepped a tall, broad-shouldered man wearing the tan uniform of the Oak Haven County Sheriff's Department. His hand was resting casually, yet terrifyingly, on the butt of his holstered sidearm. "Brianna?" Chloe whispered, stepping slightly behind Liam. "What are you doing in our house?" "Your house?" The man in the uniform scoffed. He unclipped his holster. "That's a good one. I'm Deputy Ray Calloway, Brianna's brother, and you two are trespassing on county evidence." "We hold the deed," Liam said, his heart hammering against his ribs. "We bought this place fair and square, and you are breaking and entering." Brianna let out a dry, humorless laugh. "Oh, honey, you didn't buy a house. You bought a loaded gun that we were too smart to point at our own heads. Do you have any idea who Richard Althouse was?" Liam glanced back at the dark vault. "I know he kept meticulous records. I saw the ledgers, Brianna. I saw the names." Brianna's smile vanished. "Then you know too much already. Althouse was a monster. He was the town banker back in the 20s, but he ran this county like a mafia boss. If you wanted a loan, you gave him dirt. If you didn't have dirt, he manufactured it. He held the mortgages on every farm, every storefront, and every home in Oak Haven. He squeezed our grandparents until they bled. So the town fought back," Liam guessed, connecting the horrifying dots. "They did what they had to do," Deputy Ray growled, stepping closer to the jagged hole in the wall. "In the winter of 1934, a group of men, my great-grandfather included, came up here to end it. They dragged Althouse out into the snow and made sure he'd never extort another dime from Oak Haven. But they couldn't get his money," Chloe said, the realization dawning on her. "Exactly," Brianna sneered. "Althouse was paranoid. He built this vault, and he bragged that if anyone ever tried to force it open without his specific key and code, the whole house would go up in a chemical fire. White phosphorus. Burns so hot it melts steel. The men who took him down found the vault, but they were terrified to touch it. So, they walled it up." "And you've just been waiting," Liam said, his grip tightening on the sledgehammer. "Waiting for 90 years. "We tried to find the combination," Ray said, his eyes fixed hungrily on the open steel door behind Liam. "We tore up the floorboards. We searched his safe deposit boxes in the city. Nothing. The town council finally decided to list the house. Dropped the price so low that some desperate, out-of-town fools would buy it. We figured you'd either find the combination or you'd trigger the trap and blow yourselves to hell, taking the vault with you. Either way, the town's secret stays buried. Or, in this case, we reap the rewards." Ray drew his weapon, pointing it directly at Liam's chest. "Step away from the door, kid. You did a great job. We'll take it from here." Liam didn't move. His mind was racing. The note in the tin box. "Do not turn the handle without turning the key, or the phosphorus trigger will ignite the contents." Liam had used the key. He had safely bypassed the door's trap. But Richard Althouse was a paranoid mastermind. Would he really only put a trap on the front door? Liam, Chloe pleaded softly, tugging at his shirt. Let them have it. It's not worth our lives. Listen to your wife, Ray said, stepping over the shattered drywall and entering the hallway. Brianna followed closely behind, her eyes wide with greed as she peered into the dark room. Liam slowly lowered the sledgehammer and stepped aside, pulling Chloe with him against the wall. Take it, Liam said quietly. Take the blood money. Ray grinned, holstering his gun. He grabbed the lantern from his sister and pushed past Liam, stepping over the threshold of the steel vault. Brianna was right on his heels. Look at it all, Brianna gasped, her hands shaking as she reached into the wooden crate Liam had opened. She pulled out a thick stack of the golden $1,928,000 bills. Ray, there's millions here. The town council doesn't even need to know about all of this. Forget the council, Ray laughed, shoving stacks of bills into his uniform pockets. We're going to the Caymans, Bri. Liam watched them from the hallway. He looked at the heavy oak desk in the center of the room. The ledgers were sitting on top, but the drawers were securely shut. The key Liam had used to open the vault door was still sitting in the main lock mechanism. I have taken what I am owed. Let the town of Oakhaven burn for their sins. Ray, Brianna said, pointing her flashlight at the heavy oak desk. The ledgers. Get the ledgers. If anyone finds those, the whole town goes down. And see if there's more cash in those drawers. Ray walked over to the desk. He grabbed the brass handle of the top right drawer and yanked it hard. It was locked. Damn it, Ray muttered. He planted his boot against the side of the desk, gripped the handle with both hands, and pulled with all his strength. There was a sharp, mechanical snap. It sounded like a mousetrap going off, echoing loudly within the hollow confines of the desk. Ray froze. What was that? From beneath the floorboards of the vault, a horrible, high-pitched hissing sound began. It was the sound of a pressurized gas line being ruptured. Liam, run! Chloe screamed. The smell hit them first, a sickening, garlic-like odor that burned the back of their throats instantly. What did you do? Brianna shrieked, backing away from the desk as a thick, yellowish-white smoke began to billow from the cracks in the oak wood. I just pulled the drawer, Ray yelled, coughing violently as the smoke hit his face. Liam didn't wait to see what happened next. He knew exactly what it was. The vault door wasn't the only thing rigged. The desk was the final fail-safe. Althouse had ensured that even if someone bypassed the door, they would never leave with his secrets. Liam grabbed Chloe's hand and sprinted down the hallway. Behind them, inside the vault, the hissing reached a deafening crescendo. Then, a blinding flash of pure, magnesium-white light illuminated the second floor. The heat wave hit Liam and Chloe in the back like a physical punch, knocking them forward onto the top of the stairs. My eyes! Ray screamed from inside the room. Bri! Help me! The white phosphorus had ignited. It wasn't a normal fire. It was a chemical reaction that fed on oxygen, burning at over 5,000 degrees Fahrenheit. The stacks of gold certificates, the wooden crates, and the blackmail ledgers were instantly vaporized in the blistering heat. Liam scrambled to his feet, pulling Chloe up. They practically fell down the main staircase as the second floor began to roar with flames. The structural timbers of the old craftsman house, dry as bone after 90 years, caught fire almost instantaneously. The front door! Liam shouted over the deafening roar of the fire. They rushed through the parlor, abandoning their tools, their air mattresses, and everything they had brought with them. Smoke was already pouring down the stairs, thick, black, and toxic. They threw their bodies against the heavy oak front door, spilling out onto the overgrown lawn. The cool night air hit their lungs, and they collapsed into the damp grass, coughing uncontrollably. Liam looked back. The entire second floor of the house was a raging inferno. The flames shooting out of the shattered upstairs windows weren't orange. They were a terrifying, ghostly white. Brianna. Ray. Chloe gasped between coughs, staring in horror at the burning house. There were no screams coming from inside. The heat had been too intense, too absolute. The Callaways had been consumed by the very greed that had corrupted their town for nearly a century. Suddenly, Liam felt a heavy weight in his jacket pocket. He reached inside. His fingers brushed against thick, heavy paper. While Ray and Brianna had been distracted by the open crate of money, Liam had quietly slipped his hand into the crate and pulled out 2 banded stacks of the 1,928 gold certificates. He pulled them out now, the golden hue of the bills reflecting the blazing light of the burning house. It wasn't the millions that were in the vault, but it was $200,000 in rare historical currency. At an auction, it would be worth triple that. It was more than enough to pay off their debts, buy a real home, and start over. Sirens began to wail in the distance, echoing through the dark woods. The Oakhaven Fire Department was coming, but Liam knew they wouldn't rush to put this fire out. The town was finally getting exactly what it wanted. The Althouse house was burning to the ground, taking its dark secrets with it. "Come on," Liam said, helping Chloe to her feet. He tucked the money safely back into his coat. "We need to get to the car. We're leaving Oakhaven, and we are never looking back." They ran to their Honda Civic, the engine roaring to life. As Liam threw the car into gear and sped down the dirt driveway, Chloe looked in the rearview mirror. The massive chimney, the only stone structure of the house, suddenly buckled. With a thunderous crash that shook the earth, the roof of 88 Hollow Creek Road collapsed inward, burying the vault, the gold, and the Callaways under tons of burning debris. The cheapest house in the state was gone, but for Liam and Chloe, the nightmare had paid off. They drove into the night, the blazing glow of the town's burning sins fading in the distance, leaving them with a fortune salvaged from the ashes. If this unbelievable true story of hidden treasure and small-town corruption kept you on the edge of your seat, hit that like button right now. Don't forget to share